Today we're going to be talking about subject-verb identification. So it's important to keep in mind that this is the information that's pretty much similar to what's in your books on chapters 1 through 4, but that this lecture is meant to be a supplement to the book and not as a replacement to the book. I'm going to be going over all 4 chapters' information fairly quickly, so it's important to kind of just keep that in mind and to go back to the book as you complete sections. So we're talking about identifying simple subjects and verbs in sentences. And one way of thinking about subjects and verbs, which I think is pretty helpful, is to think of the subject as the actor in the sentence and the verb as the action of the sentence. So the subject is the one that is performing. It's the person, the thing, the activity that's performing the verb, the action of the sentence. It's possible that there are other things that look like actions in the sentence, and it's possible that there are other nouns in the sentence that are not actually performing that action. But for subject-verb identification, we're only interested in really looking at what the actor and the action of that sentence are. The verbs are usually easier to locate, so it's important for you to look for your verbs first. The verb, again, is the action that the sentence is trying to show. So on these sample sentences, the first one here, John laughed at the joke. Laughed is the thing that John is doing, and that's why laughed is our action for that sentence. Mary ran to the store. Ran is the thing that Mary did. The school opened at 7. Opened is what the school did. Okay, so those are the actions of those sentences. It's important to keep in mind that the words is, was, were, all of these forms of is, am, are, was, were, those are always verbs, and they don't seem like verbs in the same way that run or skip or jump seem like verbs. The reason why they're still verbs is that in a sentence like John is a joke, the point of this sentence, the action of this sentence, is to equate John equals a joke. Kind of a mean sentence to do for John. It works in essentially the same way as something like this. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's basically a math sentence. The equal sign is equivalent to the verb is, and I'm saying the thing that comes before is the same as the thing that comes afterwards. So 2 plus 2 is the same as 4. Also keep in mind that words like seems, becomes, appear, appears, all those kinds of substitutes for being, states of being, those are all verbs. And again, the reason why I'm pointing out these ones especially is that they're harder for us to kind of think of as verbs. The verbs are what changes the tense of the sentence. They're what tells us whether or not we have a present tense sentence, a sentence that's happening right now, a past tense sentence, something that happened earlier, or a future tense sentence, something that will be happening in the future. And so notice that the same action is happening in all 3 of these sentences. It's just that in this first one, it happened in the past. In the second one, it's happening right now. And in this third one, it's going to be happening in the future. As you are looking for verbs in sentences, it's important to keep in mind that there are a few things that are not verbs. The most important one to kind of keep in mind is infinitives, and that's any verb that has to in front of it. Okay, so it's got the word to before it. And so in this first example here, I want to read the book. To read looks like the action of the sentence in some ways. It looks like what is happening in the sentence. But if we read this sentence carefully, it's important to note that I'm not actually reading this book. I'm just wanting to read it. So my action is want. Okay? To read is what I want to do. On this next one down here, John plans to enroll in college. On this one, it's important to note that the sentence is about how John has plans. It's not that he is enrolling in this sentence. So to enroll, while it looks like a verb, it's not actually happening. also sometimes mistaken for verbs are adverbs. And adverbs, the easy way to think of an adverb is that it's simply the way in which a verb or an adjective is performed. So on this one, I drove recklessly. Drove is my verb, that's the action. Recklessly just tells you how I drove. On this next one, I slowly disarmed the bomb. The action is disarm, that's what I did. I disarmed the bomb. Slowly just tells you how I did that. Down below here are the some of the more common adverbs, not, never, and very, and those are always adverbs. And adverbs are not verbs. Okay, but they do help verbs. They help out the verb and tell the verb kind of how it's being performed, how the action's being performed. So once we've found the verb, it becomes a simpler process to go back and find the subject. And so a subject cannot exist without a verb. It can't be a subject. It could be a noun. It could be a person, a place, or a thing in a sentence, but it's not going to be the verb or the subject of the sentence. It's not going to be the actor. So on these sentences here, John reads the New York Times. Before, we had the same sentences, and we marked that reads was the action. And so it's John who does the reading. John is the one who reads the New York Times, so he's the subject. The store opened at midnight. Opened is the action, and so it's the store that did the opening, so the store is the subject. Amanda hates Roger. Hates is the verb here, and the person who's doing the hating on this sentence is Amanda. Note that the syntax here, putting Amanda before the verb, tells us that it's Amanda that hates Roger and not the other way around. Roger may love Amanda, it's hard to tell. It's important to keep in mind also that words like he, she, it, they, you, and we, these are all pronouns, that these can act as subjects as well. And I often have students wondering whether or not you have to have what that word refers back to. So for example, if he refers back to Bob, we don't have to see Bob in a previous sentence for the sentence to be complete. We could just have he there. So I could say he went to the store, and even though I don't have Bob or John or whoever he refers back to, he went to the store is still a complete sentence. He went to the store. And in that case, then, my verb would be went, and my subject would be he. So on these three sentences, then, again, reads is my verb, just like before. So these are the same sentence, just with a pronoun instead. It opened at midnight. Again, same sentence, just with the pronoun instead, it. She hates Roger. Again, same sentence, just with a pronoun instead. There's a couple of subjects that are sometimes tricky, and one of the most commonly kind of tricky ones for students is that a word that ends in ing, a verb that ends in ing, these are words that we call gerunds. And gerunds can be subjects. And the reason why, if you look at this first sentence here, this one that says reading hurts the eyes, we've got the action here, hurts. And then we want to look at, what is it that's doing the hurting? And so it's the reading, the activity of reading that hurts the eyes. I'm not necessarily reading in this sentence. I mean, that would be a sentence like, I am reading this lecture, which I'm not, which is why I'm probably stumbling a bit. But on this case, the action is am reading, and I'm the one who's the subject there. Listening requires full attention. My action is requires, and it's listening that requires that full attention, so that's why listening is my subject. Walking increases health. I'm not necessarily walking in this sentence. There's nobody walking here. I'm just saying that the activity of walking is what increases health. Another one that's kind of tricky is when we have imperatives, and imperatives are commands. That's when we command somebody to do something. It's often the kind of the mother voice or the parent voice. So, mow the lawn. Clean up your room. That kind of thing. So, mow is my verb, and the person who's going to do the mowing in this, it's not the lawn. The lawn's not going to mow itself. It's you, whoever I'm speaking to, that's going to mow the lawn. Take out the trash. Take is my verb. And again, it's not the trash that's going to take anything. It's you who's going to take it out. Eat your vegetables. Again, the vegetables aren't eating anything. It's you who will eat them. Adjectives are not subjects, and we talked about adverbs just a minute ago. Adverbs are the words that basically tell us what kind of verbs, what kind of action, how an action's performed, and an adjective then does the same thing for nouns. Adjectives tell us what kind of subject, what kind of noun. So it's just important to keep in mind. I don't think that we mistake adjectives for subjects very often, but it's important to kind of keep that in mind. So here, the car eluded the police. Eluded is my action. Car is my subject. And down below here, her car eluded the police. Again, eluded is the action, car is the subject. And we're going to go ahead and stop there, I think, for now, and we'll talk some more about subjects and verbs in a secondary lecture.